All right. Can you guys hear me? Did I get it right this morning?
You
All
did.
right.
Yep.
All right. Golly, this tech lately. All right. We did it. We did it. Well, happy Thursday. You guys don't know it, but is the last day of the week for us this week. Volleyball calls again. I love how they just disregard work days, school days, volleyball tournaments must go on. So I'll be traveling tomorrow. We will take Friday off, but we'll be back at it again next week. I know we've got school vacation for at least Massachusetts. I don't know who else, but we'll still go have a good, strong week next week. But let's finish this week off strong. We've got Caitlin Sheehan with us, our resident attorney. I know she's got some fire to bring, but I do want to open it up to the floor. We had a great conversation yesterday just by Romani just talking about an offer that she had going on. Anybody have something that they want to just kind of put on the table that we could dissect?
I got a client looking at an interesting situation in Wareham.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
The property's is going through foreclosure, but the town allowed the current owner to build an addition, and the addition actually encroaches on someone else's property. My buyer still would like to buy it, understanding what her repercussions might be.
So this is a good one. Typically, what you see, Brett, on stuff like this, and I know you've done a lot of building and stuff, and you're well of these lot lines and everything. You typically are going to see like a shed, a fence, but you're saying the actual house is over the line, yeah?
Yeah. Driveway, house, it's all over.
All over. I don't know that I've seen the house be over. My assumption, and I'm glad we've got Caitlin with us this morning, would be that we could, if we can get the neighbor to allow for an easement, would be my guess. But Caitlin, we're going to get you right into the mix this morning and see what your thoughts are or how you've seen this get resolved before. I mean, obviously, we can buy some land off of the neighbor and we can redo the lot lines. That's one option for sure. But I'm wondering if we could do an easement. So what are your initial thoughts here?
Absolutely. Those are really the two options that I've seen get used that will clear up this issue. If you've got something that's going over the neighbor's land, I think the big question here is, does the neighbor know? Was the neighbor aware that all of this went over their land, and how long has it been there? Do you know?
Permit was issued in 99. So
And the
over
permit,
20 years.
so the permit actually allowed for the property to go over the landline, or was it just mistake on whose part was a mistake? Was it the builder's? Did the permit let it go too far?
Well, that kind of piggybacks off our conversation yesterday. Is the agent doesn't answer the phone. They only just want submitted offers.
Okay.
So I don't want to. I could call the neighbor, but I don't want to alert the neighbor just yet. Thinking that oh, there's a cash windfall or something.
Yeah.
So
So right now, am I understanding it fully that you've got the buyer, the listing agent doesn't even know, you don't think, and you guys have discovered it on the buy side?
No. The listing agent knows, and they
Okay.
supposedly did order a survey, but he doesn't want to do any communication.
Okay.
He just wants offers submitted through the MLS and.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I
He's
know
a
this property
foreclosure.
too.
He's
You
a
do?
foreclosure agent. He is definitely going to put little to no effort into that.
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
222 Lake Ave?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that guy. He doesn't talk to anybody. They just want uploaded offers.
Yeah, and so this is a good a topic as well. So Chris kind of pointed out, and I should have picked up on it because you initially mentioned, Brett, that this was a foreclosure property, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Chris's comment here is very relevant, and you guys need to understand this stuff for whatever reason. Most of the guys that get involved, or gals that get involved with the bank-owned stuff, are that's their focus. The bank gives me listings. I do the bare minimum. I put it on the market. I service the listing. I'm not out there to try and be a professional agent. right? And so communication is typically low. And I think where it stems from, because we had a couple of REO accounts, so real estate owned, bank owned accounts when I had my Century 21 franchises. And we had a couple of agents that really specialized in it. And here's what would happen. We've got these bank owned properties and they've got 30 people submitting offers. You got another 30 people giving you questions, and they've got 30 of these listings. Right. And so all of a sudden, they don't even have the bandwidth to react to any of this stuff. So it wasn't even that they weren't, because these were agents that were traditional agents that converted over to bank owned agents. And I saw that transition happen. Right. And in the bank owned days, I'm talking 2008 to 2011, this was the reality. Okay. My frustration now is I don't know that there's that much bank-owned stuff, but I think a lot of the tendencies of those types of agents have kind of rolled over where it's just like, hey, I can't do anything anyway. All I'm going to do is submit this stuff to the bank. Just submit your offers. So, Margaretta, your hand is up, and I know you've got some experience doing the bank-owned stuff, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, not that I'm that experienced at it, but a little bit under my belt. I do have currently a bank-owned property, and from my experience, I have to tell you, there are various bank-owned properties. Number one, there's the ones with mold, and they're going for dirt cheap, and yes, that's exactly what Steve just explained. There's the other properties that are actually a little bit nicer, and a bank has put some effort behind it to make it more marketable. One thing you have to understand as like when you do have a bank owned property, there's so much you have to do, BPOs, inspections. It is overwhelming and it takes a lot of time. I think one of the biggest thing is that possibly what happens is, the property sits there for a long time sometimes because there's issues with those properties. And you just get so overwhelmed with it. And sometimes, you just get fed up with it. And it's like you want to do minimum, or sometimes even the bank themselves that said you cannot reveal that information. So there's much more going on behind the scenes on those things. So don't just blame the agent. We can't hear you, Steve.
We lost your audio, Steve.
Sorry. The other thing that Margaretta didn't touch on is, guess what happens when the bank gives you 10 listings a month? You're not making a traditional commission, right? So they're not making the full commission that you guys are used to in a traditional listing, right? So it's often a reduced commission plus all this hassle. And I think at some point it just leads to burnout. But we're trying to, let's still come back to the issue, Caitlin. So what other things have you seen, or how might we go about this situation?
So the easiest thing to do would be an easement. And if you're not sure, if your buyer is unsure, if we don't even know if the neighbor is aware that this is encroaching over the line or not, you kind of want to put into your offer that it's going to be on them to make sure that the neighbor signs an easement and grants this over. Otherwise, we're going to have a property that's outside of the lines of the property, and it's going to cause issues. And the neighbor has the right to say, pull it down. Are they really going to make that happen? No, but it's going to make it a lot messier if it can't be fixed with just a traditional easement. So property is completely foreclosed. It is now bank owned. This isn't like a pre-foreclosure. We're trying to avoid it, just to make sure.
It says it's in foreclosure, and that's all the information that I got.
So we don't know right now if it's actually, the foreclosure is in process and the bank owns it, or if a person owns it and it's heading into the bank.
Not sure.
Okay. Just to be on the safe side, I would write into your offer that more information needs, we need to see that survey. If they know it's over the line, we want to see that survey, that, our offer that's going in is going to be contingent on that survey coming back and showing where it is. And then also that any easements or work that needs to be done to clear the property and clear that title line, that it's going to be done by the seller side. If your buyer, that would be the traditional way to go. When you've got a foreclosure like this, can't guarantee that they're going to be able to do that work and put that in. If your buyer is in love with this property, are they set? Are they like, this is my home, this is where I want to be?
She says that, she's been looking in Wareham, and this is the first thing, in that price point. And, we're going to go see it Saturday, but she says that, she'd still buy it. She wants to be there. If there wasn't major repercussions on her end.
Right. And so there is always the option that she takes it and she just buys it knowing that it's over the line and that she's the one who's going to have to do the work to either buy the land off the neighbor in a separate little deed that will then join the deeds together to make her property her own land line that is set up that we had originally, and then also the piece of land that is being encroached on over onto the neighbor's land. So you get a deed from them, you have she basically buys it over and starts paying taxes on that. Do we know when the work was done? Like, has it been up there for like 10, 20 years, or is it like?
Yeah, the permit was issued in 99, so have to assume that's right around when the work was done, so over 20 years.
Okay. Let's see. I'm almost going to guarantee that they weren't paying taxes on it, because at 20 years, you're coming up on adverse possession when you could actually just say, this is now my land, but that's a whole different action she would have to get into. If she is absolutely dead set that she loves this house, I would make her very aware that she is probably going to have to deal with the neighbor and, make some real good contacts and become real good friends, because they're going to have to either work out an easement situation where we figure out exactly what the footage is that's encroaching, exactly how much of the driveway is encroaching. Is the driveway shared, or is it just that her driveway is over the line, or does the neighbor use the driveway?
It's her driveway.
Okay. So it isn't going to be a situation where it's like, hey neighbor, I'll share my driveway with you or anything like that. She's going to have to take on the responsibility of either getting that easement put together and having that easement granted. Usually those easements are going to involve care and maintenance up into a point where something is damaged. When you've got an entire piece of the house that is going over the line, it's not going to be similar to a fence easement that's going to be repair and maintenance up until the time where the fence is damaged. And then when that fence comes down, you don't need the easement anymore because you just moved the fence. But those are your two options. You're going to have to get a deed from the neighbor or with some kind of grant, or you're going to have an easement put together in place. I would personally put something in the offer just saying that you want to see that, your offer is contingent on seeing the survey that comes back, so we know exactly how far over the line. If it's a couple inches, the neighbor's probably gonna be like, whatever, it's no big deal. If it's feet, they get a little iffy when it comes into like a large amount of land that they're losing. Do you know how much it is?
I don't.
Okay.
Caitlin, a couple of questions for you. I'm seeing Adam put in the comments here. Is it a cash deal? So I'm assuming he's asking that because if the bank finds out that we've got this encroachment, is that an automatic no-go? Or have you seen banks lend? And what are your thoughts there?
Banks will allow it similar to a title issue, just something that has to be cleared up. So if it comes forward and the bank sees it and then they reach out to me and they're like, this is going, if I have an answer right back, like, yep, we're aware we're creating an easement. Yep, we're aware we're putting together a deed. They'll let it go. They'll let it slide. Oftentimes when it's something that's ongoing, sometimes they'll grant you some time, almost like a holdback. That's not usually the common way to handle it. But lenders will let it go. They're going to treat it like a title issue.
But typically they're going to want it resolved prior to closing on the property.
They'll want it resolved prior to closing, unless it's something, like I say, it has to go into land court and it's going to be then they'll understand. But generally speaking, prior to close, they're going to want to see it. So just kind of look into that also, and just double check and see, what are the foreclosure dates? Like if we're in pre-foreclosure or if we're in the process of foreclosure, at what point are we transferring over from the person who owns it now to the bank owning it? And we have to, because those dates have to get moved as well if we're going to be waiting on easements and titles and getting through land court. Right. Hopefully it doesn't even get to land court, because it should be able to be resolved with the neighbor.
Okay.
Caitlin, a couple other things that are coming to mind for me. You represent the buyer. Do you have any reservations, or what are you telling the buyer about going with the easement route versus, hey, I want you to own that land. I know it's going to be probably more expensive to do the land purchase, but here's my concerns with just doing an easement.
So just doing an easement, honestly, is really no different, because it kind of goes into really well what we were going to talk about today anyway, which is just easements in general, because it's just the use of another's land with the right to do it. So as long as we have an easement in place and it's signed, then there's nothing that's going to change it from actually owning the property outright with a deed.
Almost to the point where owning it outright, if it's a substantial amount, well, you're going to pay a little bit extra taxes on land and it might be worse financially for you. Is that?
That would be the only thing, is that you do
Yeah.
the deed, you know, you get that put together. It's a little more expensive because now you've got to record a deed, you've got to redo those lines, you got to let the town know, and now you're going to be paying taxes on this other piece of land. But where you've already got such a substantial piece of the property where there's, you know, a portion of the addition is over the line and the driveway, the town is never going to say, even if it took it to court, the court is never going to say, all right, cut it back, you know, take that down and take it back, especially if it's from 1999. They're never going to say, you know, this has gone too far. They would, if it came down to it in a land court issue like that, the courts are going to say the neighbor should have done something about this when it was being built, or they should have figured it out. At this point, 25 years later, we're just going to grant it. So an easement in my eyes is, I would have no problem with an easement versus a deed.
And I know my brother's been in a similar situation where the neighbor felt like they kind of had him by the you know what, and forced a payment to make this happen. That was a substantial payment. If you were representing this buyer, like, how confident are you that, hey, look, I wouldn't pay him they want $1,000 or something, hey, to do it, you know, but 5-10 grand, I'd run this thing to land court because I'm pretty confident they're not going to have a leg to stand on. This thing's been there for a long time. Like, could you kind of talk through that? Is that kind of the conversation that you'd have? Or if they're like, hey, they're looking for 5 grand, like it's going to cost you X to go through the whole process anyway, just give them the 5 grand and let's get this thing done.
Right. That would definitely be the cost analysis conversation that I would have, is if, you know, they're going to agree to it for $1,000, like and we don't even know if they know it's there, anything they get. And it might be a situation where they think like, oh, here's our windfall, we've got it. No court is going to say, tear down half of this house to get a couple of inches back. They're never going to say it. If anything, like I say, they're going to just force a deed and transfer those lines. So with that being said, I would have the conversation of like, look, up to, you know, how bad do you want this house? Number one, how bad do you want to fight for it? Because if we don't know if they're going to get all of this done with the neighbor prior to closing on the seller side, then it's something that the buyer is going to have to take on, and they're going to have to do that. So how much do you want this house that you're in love enough that you want to make this happen? All of that's going to go into that conversation. So if you like this house $5,000 worth, absolutely, let's do it for 5K. But find out where your max is and always start low, obviously. Like, that's just negotiation 101. With that being said, if the neighbor is really pushing for the funds, then it's like, okay, then they're going to have, you know, how much is it worth to them if they're talking about wanting 10 and we're willing to offer 5? How much is it going to cost for them to hire an attorney, get an instrument survey, figure out exactly how much it is, do the adjustment for the amount of taxes? And I see nothing wrong with them wanting to be paid for the amount of taxes since 99 that they've been paying for land that they haven't been able to use. That's a reasonable ask. I see nothing wrong with that. When if they're looking for, like, you know, pay off my taxes for the next 20 years or something like that, that's different. You know, when you're looking, if they're really trying to get you by the, you know what's, it's not, you're just at that point, just go ahead, hire an attorney and we'll argue it out. And they're going to realize pretty quickly that they're not going to get what they think they're going to get.
Margareta.
Yeah, I guess just a note, because something similar Kate and I are going through now about the dates. Make sure that in the purchase and sales, if it goes that far, you have that they will be delivering clean title and what's the dates around those. And also make sure what you're paying attention to, the dates from extension, because there's probably an extension going to be involved versus what's in the purchase and sales contract. But and a good attorney will probably guide you through that. But just highlight, because I mean, I've learned from this process that there's sometimes different dates and it gives you a loophole a bit. So just FYI.
Margareta, maybe just a little bit more, because I don't know where you're going with that one about being careful about extensions and stuff. Maybe a little bit more detail, or what did you run into?
So what I ran into, we were under agreement, and then there was a title issue. And, you know, the purchase and sale says that you have to deliver a clean title on a property. And because it obviously can't transfer otherwise. So if that isn't there, there was an issue actually with dates where one in the purchase and sale says something like they have 60 days to clean the title, and they went like over 60 days. But then on the extension, or I think it said 30 days in the purchase and sales, but the extension was for like 60 days. So then the question is, you know, can the person get out of this contract, or can the bank get out of this contract, becomes, issue. So I guess my point to this is make sure that people are really narrowing down on the dates that they make sense between all documents, which is good for anybody any day.
Right. And are you trying to say, like, it says that they've got 60 days to clear title. If they can't do it in 60 days, then the buyer could back out or the seller could back out. And in this case, you're just saying, hey, I don't want your buyer to just want this house. And then they realize the title is going to take 6 months to clear up and the seller's able to back out of the deal and the buyer loses it. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes. And but there was also potential other issues if like the dates don't match up. So like who can get out of anything at what point, what does that really mean? Is this contract valid? It's validity of the contract almost.
Kate, you have any
This is probably
thoughts
beyond
on
what we
it,
thought.
on what she's saying? Because I can see what she's saying, right? That you've got so much time to clear the title, and the bank says, well, we can't, and because we can't, we want to back out of this deal. We're going to put it back on the market. And we're going to go try and find another buyer. And this buyer is like, well, wait a second. Like, I still want to move forward. I don't care how long it's going to take you. Any
What is
thoughts?
does the buyer, like, do they have a place to stay right now? Or are they thinking like, hey, we've got a foreclosure, we need a quick close? Or what are they thinking?
Well, it's a bank loan and it's investment options. So really, that's not the case.
Oh,
Just
sorry,
something
Margareta.
they
I
wanted.
was meaning on the original property that we were talking about over the line.
I mean, she says she's ready to go now. But she right now her company pays for housing, so she's not really in a rush.
So
She'd
she's got a
rather-
little time.
Yeah.
I'd do a little legwork yourself. If you're not hearing it back from the seller, I wouldn't reach out to the neighbor until we get that survey back. Because if it's inches, I mean, it's barely worth the conversation. You go over, and you're saying like, hey, we've got a couple of inches over the line. But if it's, if you're taking up 10 feet over a 20-foot driveway and you're really like eating up their land, then that's a little.
I don't, from what I've seen, I don't think it's, that big. It's probably closer to inches to a foot, maybe two. So.
Okay. Then that's an easy, again, I would see nothing wrong if they were, being kind of mistreated by their neighbor and, they hadn't been offered anything for the taxes. But I would say the offer of taxes and then maybe a little bit extra would get an easement signed real quick. And then it's done and dusted. It's something you don't have to worry about down the line.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing we didn't cover that you kind of threw out there was the adverse possession. It's one of those terms that we had to know to get our real estate license that comes up once in your career. So you were a little bit like weary about whether this would qualify for that. I mean, to me, this seems like a prime example of that. 20 years is the timeline?
I believe in Massachusetts, you're looking at 20 years. It's got to be open and adverse. So, everybody knows it's there. You're not hiding it at all. The only thing that would preclude it is the other thing is you need to be paying taxes on it that entire time. So if the person who put, if that neighbor had, when they built, and our seller essentially, or our foreclosure seller, if when they built the property, they had an agreement with the neighbor to pay those taxes. I mean, we could be very close to an adverse possession, but then again, we're going to have to take that to land court to get that approved. It's a lot easier if you just have the neighbor sign off on it. Because by the nature of adverse possession, it's a taking. It's not a granting, it's a taking. So it is an adverse action, meaning that it's got to be one person against another.
So the part that you see you'd be concerned with here is they probably haven't been paying taxes on that.
They likely haven't been paying the taxes on the portion of the land that they're encroaching on.
And is that automatic? Then adverse possession gets thrown out?
Yep.
Or is it like those? That's just automatic. So that doesn't
adverse
go
possession is because it's an adverse action, and Massachusetts in general does not like adverse actions. As an adverse action, all of these criteria need to be met. You have to have met the time limit. You have to have been open and, adversely possessing this property without being, you're not being sneaky and doing it in the middle of the night. It's the middle of the day and you're mowing the lawn. Like, hey guys, pretending I'm on, like, just like you own it. Like have absolutely no qualms about that. You've got to meet all of those criteria. And one of the criteria is that you've been paying the taxes on it.
That seems like it'd be the tough one to do, because I don't know how you'd be paying taxes on property that you typically or technically don't own unless you had some sort of a written agreement. Or what other scenarios might I be missing where, because the tax bill just comes and I pay for what I owe, right? Like I don't go to the town and say, well, could you throw an extra $30 a year on it because I got this little, right? So
Right.
what's the scenario? I don't know if you've seen something where they'd be paying.
So the scenario for these, the town will take a payment for taxes from anyone who wants to pay it. Like they'll send it in. So it's kind of one of those, like, keep your eyes open. So if all of a sudden your tax bill, like if someone is paying a portion of your taxes and you're getting your tax bill and you're like, oh, it's $50 less this quarter. That's not crazy. And you just let that go and it continues to be $50 less, but you're still getting a bill saying it's supposed to be $50 more. Keep an eye on your tax bill. If all of a sudden you find out down the line that this neighbor has been paying $50 to use this piece of land and they've been paying it openly right to the, taxing authority, and you've been accepting it as like, oh, I get a discount. That's on you. That's very much a kind of buyer beware situation. You need to keep an eye on your taxes and make sure that you're paying the correct amount. And if you pay the amount, like if you put it through and they're like, oh, hey, there's a credit on the account for this much. Why is there a credit? I only pay exactly what's owed. I've never paid more. Where did this credit come from? That's how to avoid adverse possession. But in general, the taxing authority, they'll take a payment for a piece of land from anybody. It doesn't have to be from the buyer or the owner.
Any
They just
other
wanna get paid.
questions that are coming up, guys, based on this scenario? Brett, really appreciate you bringing this one, man. This is a good one.
No problem.
It is a great one, but has she even seen the inside yet?
Saturday, only pictures.
Yep.
I say run, go find her the same house.
She's very adamant on this house for whatever reason, so we'll see.
Because let's face it, the bank's only going to want to see, Margaretta, correct me if I'm wrong, easy, easy, easy. So if you go writing on that offer, I want this, I want this, I want this, they're going to be like, yeah, I want a lot too. Let's talk about it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, that's
how long has this one been on the market, Brett? Do you know?
I think it's relatively new.
Yeah.
I forget.
And do you know if they've already had offers or they've accepted them? You don't, because the guy's unresponsive.
Yeah.
The girl,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, there's everything that's submitted through online, and they'll reach out to you after an offer is submitted, basically.
So the access you're going to get on Saturday to take a look at, is that like an open house access or is that scheduled appointment access?
Scheduled through showing time.
Okay. Is there anything else written into MLS or anything about what they're going to allow for access past that point?
No, but there's just a whole, sheet of how to submit an offer and what they want to see in the offer.
Okay, just be very careful, because I've definitely had clients get into, they fall in love with a foreclosure home, and if it's, far enough along and bank owned, the bank isn't going to allow anybody in, and sometimes they won't allow them in even for appraisal. Just know, their liability issue, they don't want to put anything on this home, and so they are actually going to keep people out. So just make sure that you ask what the access will be. Can we get an inspector in there? Can we get the appraiser in there? Otherwise, cash deal is the way to go on that.
Right.
What was your guy or your gal cash, Brett?
She's not cash.
Okay. I will say the other thing to keep in mind, just because we're on the topic, when the banks won't allow inspections or appraisal, or sometimes they'll allow that stuff, but they've winterized the property, right? So you got no utilities on. So now I can't test the furnace, I can't test the water pipes. So either you just can't, and we got to be okay with that. Or I have seen a bank allow a buyer to de-winterize as long as they were willing to re-winterize, right? So it was maybe $250 to de-winterize. Let's put water back into the pipes. Let's do all of the testing that we need to do. And then I've got to re-winterize it. Highly unlikely, because now there's risk. We're putting water back in there. It's just easier for the bank to say, nope, we're looking for easy peasy, kind of like what Chris had said earlier. But I have seen a bank do it. And maybe it's the type of situation where you got a property that's been sitting for a while and they're like, all right, if that's what it's going to take, maybe we got to bend a little bit on this deal to sell this thing. So.
And just be careful when it comes to stuff like that. Those are things where you're going to lose the lender on that. The lender is not going to You know, they might sit through a title action and be okay with that, but they're not going to sit if they can't get an inspection or if they can't get an appraisal, if they can't see that the, you know, the boiler is working. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on that stuff, because you'll lose lenders over that pretty quickly.
Right.
She's not FHA, right?
No.
Oh, thank God.
Small favors. We lost you, Steve.
Lost you.
God damn it. I got to hit that button. What a great call. This is what it's all about. So you just never know your weird little scenario. We went in 8 different directions with this today. We talked about a real estate term that you've used once to pass your exam, which is always fun to do. So yeah, this is what these calls are supposed to be about. It gets me jazzed to do them. So bring this stuff, no matter how small you think it is, we can spiral it out and go in a lot of different directions. So appreciate you guys. Remember, no call tomorrow. We'll be back at it again on Monday. Go take some action. Let's enjoy this spring market a little bit, and let's put some deals together. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks,
Take
Steve.
care, guys.